3 tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott, that's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where Andrew knows the deal. Let's go, Andrew. Anybody else double screening Upon Further Review and the Myrtle Beach Bowl?
Yes.
All of us. That is 100% correct. This is going to be a 3-hour show of us just giving play-by-play commentary on UTSA and Coastal Carolina down in Conway, South Carolina. Honestly, we do have a lot to get to here. So, upon further review, we are going to go back and take a more look at some of the big picture questions coming out of the college football playoff first round, some specific questions as well, as I'm interested to hear what we think are the next steps for some of those teams whose season has concluded. And plus, you know, we got some portal buzz, lots to get into. Tanny, I love the hoodie. If you're watching on youtube.com/cover3, and look, I get texts from audio listeners like, man, I had to go to YouTube to pull this up because there are certain things that we offer with our multi-platform excellence that you just don't get. And is this special order? Did you cut those sleeves? Like, what's this?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Scissors. The scissors were out. This was an early Christmas gift to myself. Since my daughters and my wife don't give me anything, I just have to buy what I want. And I really wanted a Bill Belichick cut-off hoodie to wear anytime I want. If Florida State sucks again, North Carolina is my bandwagon team. Like, that's what I'm jumping on. Like, my sister went there. My niece went there. I told you guys this. Carolina basketball school. Like, this is – I'm rooting for it to work, so I'm all in.
How are we going to square this with Ben?
Oh, that's right. Well, that'll be after his career's done.
Carolina football, NC State basketball.
That's after he's done, though. He'll be his eligibility. Well, unless he sues, I don't know what else. I don't know what.
Hold on,
he gets another couple years.
I might be onto something because I don't know if there's been anyone in this world that has ever had the unique split of North Carolina football and NC State basketball.
Yeah,
I mean, have I seen the opposite where it's like NC State football, like North Carolina resident, grows up in the state, is a UNC fan, goes to NC State and like goes to all the football games, and it's like Carter Finley Stadium's awesome. I'm an NC State football fan. Then like hides in their dorm room and still roots for UNC basketball. That's happened. Like there have been many of those throughout the generation. But a North Carolina football, NC State basketball, you could, Danny, you always, you do a great job of differentiating yourself and being a unique one of one. That would just really add to the brand right there.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right, let's just go ahead and start there since you've got the Belichick hoodie on. I felt like it was worth a mention. It's not a surprise. We don't need to unpack a lot, but when you've got Steve Belichick joining the staff as defensive coordinator now made official.
What?
Yeah, I know. Stunning right there. Wow. Danny, what can we think we know about Steve Belichick in terms of what he's going to bring to this staff and this team?
He's got 100 times more experience than Bill Belichick in college football, because that would be a 0 for Bill Belichick. And at least Steve Belichick had last year with Washington. This is no surprise. He's been with his dad the whole time throughout his career with the Patriots. Then he, goes away and he does cut his teeth there. I think this will be a valuable resource for Bill to rely on his son, of not only complexities of dealing with today's player in college and the differences between pro and college, but some of the concepts you'll see from a defensive perspective, what you're trying to defend offensively, rule changes. I mean, the illegal man downfield, like, have you ever seen that called in an NFL game? Like, it's very, very rare unless it's on a screen or something. But that is something that college football gets away with most of the time. They get away with it. So I'm sure he's teaching them about how to defend the RPO and some of the rule differences. So from that perspective, I think it's a good hire for him to bring it in.
Did he get with does he have the head coach in waiting tag? Or are they
That's
just
what we
calling
don't
him
know.
DC
I hope he
for now?
doesn't.
I thought you're not allowed to have that anymore, right?
Well, there's
Isn't
no
this the
rules
Jimbo
anymore.
rule?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It does feel like we've broken
Take that to the
system.
Supreme Court. See what
No,
they
no,
say.
but like that rule might still be on the books. After Jimbo got it, everybody complained that like he was able to go out on the road and tell people, "Hey, I'm the next head coach," and circumvent the limits on head coach recruiting visits because the head coaches, Saban called it the lazy man rule. So the head coaches got together like, we want more vacation days, less recruiting days. So let's all vote to ban ourselves from being on the road so much, right? But Jimbo was able to circumvent that because he was the head coach in waiting, but yet the old assistant rule still applied. So now I think it's if you are officially named head coach in waiting, then you have to be governed under the head coach recruiting restrictions.
I would think
so nobody officially names it anymore, but you can kind of wink it.
I'm glad that you can provide that context. If anything, my guess would be that because we're talking about a state university with a ton of state bureaucracy, that there's something along the lines of this can't be gifted, which means we like have to wink list it, go through the process and all those things. So I don't know if he would have the coach in waiting tag. I don't know if they would be able to get away with that. I'll tell you what Steve Belichick does bring: a really good linebacker. Because the number 2 linebacker in the transfer portal is a guy named Kamari House. He was playing at Washington and he entered the transfer portal and set off a lot of oh no's around Washington. That's, as Tom has said here on the Cover 3 podcast, one of the great ways that you can judge the value of a transfer portal player is that by how the fan base reacts when they enter the portal. And so like days before we get the Steve Belichick news as being official, Kamari House, one of the top linebackers in the portal, commits to North Carolina, and now here comes Washington's defensive coordinator. So at a very bare minimum, the hire of Steve Belichick has gotten you a player that 24/7 Sports rates as a 4-star transfer prospect, the number 2 linebacker in the portal right now. So that's something, okay? It's if you're going to have the nepotism, at least give me nepotism plus. This is nepotism plus a starting linebacker, and for that, sure, I'll take it.
Do you think this is like when a coach hires a recruit's father as like a coach on their staff? Is that the only reason that Bill's hiring Steve is to get this linebacker?
No, again, nepotism plus. We are just getting some plus that we're,
But what if what if the nepotism is that it's just, I don't know. I'm just making a joke. I can't think of the line here.
Those are the kinds of jokes that everyone is fired up to hear Tom Fornelli make in person when you come hang out at the first ever Cover 3 Tailgate Live, January 9th, 2025 in Fort Worth, Texas at Tannehill's Tavern and Music Hall. Show's going to get started around 5 p.m. Central Time. We'll go until 6:30. That is kickoff of the Orange Bowl. Then hang at Tannehill's because we'll be there watching the game as well. A little Orange Bowl watch party. The first time that we've done a live show, and we want you to come. Just scan that QR code in order to RSVP, get your name on the list. This is going to be an RSVP event. There are options to be able to secure, prioritized seating. There are options that will be able to get you not just prioritized seating, but also maybe a little goodie bag from the Cover 3 podcast. We'll have gifts. We'll have access to all kinds of opportunities around the Cover 3 podcast, among them getting to hang out with us, watching the Orange Bowl, and then a Cover 3 Tailgate live show leading up into it. Again, that is January 9th, Fort Worth, Texas. That is the day before the Cotton Bowl, which will be played between the winners of Oregon and Ohio State. And Texas and Arizona State. So those 4 fan bases right now, Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, and Oregon, just go ahead and RSVP. Just go ahead and get yourself a spot, because then you're going to want to come to the Cotton Bowl. It'll be the day before the Cotton Bowl. We'll watch the Orange Bowl. It'll be great. Come on. Just go ahead and lock that in. Will the Fringe fan be there? Oh, man.
It's right here.
Let's. Hey,
if Ohio State beats Oregon, according to somebody, it'll be like 20% of the people in attendance will be lunatics.
You know what? We do have to get into it. All right. Coming up on the other side, upon further review, starts with the discourse, the commentary on the college football playoff coming out of the weekend. All that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. It's a Monday, which means it gives us a chance to go back and look at the weekend that was, go a little bit deeper into the results and what they mean. It is upon further review. There were terrible calls. Do you want to go ahead and jump in?
After further review.
After further review.
After further review.
Okay. So Tom called this to our attention. And I just think it opens up the Pandora's box for the larger conversation of what the college football playoff is going to be moving forward, what fans want, what the stakeholders want. It's a big conversation, but Mikey, if we got the clip, I guess we'll just sort of let that kickstart us here from ESPN.
The first round is now complete. All home teams won. They not only won, but they won by double digits. What is your biggest takeaway from this first weekend of the 12-team playoff?
That I hope next year the committee won't get caught up in what the social media and a lot of people who are fringe fans get caught up in, which is wins. They had 11 wins. They must be good. Who did they beat? I think is much more important than how many wins you have. That's old school way of approaching it. Indiana having 11 wins and beating nobody, that doesn't mean they're one of the 12 best teams. Remember, I know, Linda, I'm not taking this out on you, but there's a big difference between deserving and best.
Yeah.
What this is all about is giving us the best 12 teams. Now, it's subjective. How you want to figure out the best 12 is up to you. But that's what I want to see. I don't want to hear about wins. How many wins? Winning's obviously important, but just because you have 11 wins doesn't mean you're better than a team that maybe had a tougher road that had 9 wins. So I think we get too caught up in how many wins you have. It's really more about who are the best 12 teams, and we need to get the best 12 teams in this tournament every year.
It's a fantastic point, Kirk. Thanks for making it, and thanks for joining us on SportsCenter.
Was it a fantastic point?
Biggest!
Come on, Linda. Let's go, Elko.
The biggest. You are a football analyst, and that is your biggest takeaway. Your biggest takeaway. There were 4 games. There were 16 quarters of football. There were some, like, Ohio. You could just make it about Ohio State and be like, hey, that was the Ohio. What is my biggest takeaway? Here, Kirk, I'll tell you, here's how it could have gone, and it could have been perfect. My biggest takeaway is that the Ohio State Buckeyes showed us the team that we thought we'd see all year, and that they went out and the way that they handled Tennessee shows us that they can be the national championship contender that we thought that they were going to be back in August. That's a dangerous thing for Oregon, and that's a dangerous thing for all the other top seeds in this playoff. Boom! That's all you had to say. Like, why do the people that talk with the loudest voice about college football sound like they don't like football?
Yeah, he's kind of turning into like the John Smoltz of college football, where it's like Smoltz hates baseball and somehow it's the national broadcast. I don't know if because he's doing NFL now, but it's a different vibe. Is he like really cold, or is he giving me like the people's eyebrow in that entire clip? Like, have you noticed like we got like Botox gone wrong here? Like,
he was freezing. He was freezing. Him and Fowler were actually complaining during the broadcast, which is.
I mean, I need some work done too, but I was like, that looks. Yeah, okay, so it's got to be cold.
They were complaining during the broadcast about being in the elements, and then like even Fowler said something about, I guess heaters weren't in the budget for this one. So
that's like
they were in great moods.
We DoorDash waters to the office on signing day like 3 years ago. That's at the Lauderdale office.
I just love the idea that only fringe lunatics online care about teams winning games to determine who the best teams are. Like,
I wonder if he used to care.
He might have.
Oh, you mean back in 2017 when he made the opposite argument? Yeah. Do we have that? No, I mean it's. I'm not going to make him the star of our podcast, But like, that's.
I mean, the great irony of this whole thing is that for years we argued that we needed the playoff to determine the national champion, and now that we have it and we have this expanded field. You got Kirk and plenty of others. Like ESPN all weekend was just a nonstop barrage of this sucks. I hate that we're broadcasting this. None of these teams should be here. Sean McDonough is like, the Big Ten sucks. The ACC sucks. Nick Saban's talking about people at home in their mother's basement being mad about, that said SMU should be here instead of the mighty Crimson Tide. But like, at the end of the day, what it seems like all these people want is opinions to decide who the best teams are. So they argued for a playoff, but now they're demanding there to be like an opinion poll of who should be in the playoff. And like I joked online last night, 3 years from now, Kirk Herbstreit's going to be on ESPN saying, well, they lost the game, but they looked better coming off the bus, so they should probably advance. In fact, now that I think about it, if we go back to the gold medal game of the 1980 Olympics, the hockey game,
give it back.
Nick Saban thinks the Soviet Union should have won because, damn it, they just looked better getting off the bus.
Not everybody was complaining. I was proud of my boy Dusty. I don't know if you saw him at the end of the Texas-Clemson game. They popped him on camera, and it was before we saw one more blowout, and he had a pretty competitive game. But he was like, can we just stop complaining and look at how great this weekend was from a fan perspective? Like, home field's delivered. So I'm proud of my guy Dusty for standing up and saying that. But my goodness, the complaining is at an all-time high. And I get it. Like, the games did suck. Like, I wish we could generate and orchestrate overtime thrillers, right? But it doesn't matter who you stack up. Like, Georgia Tech was supposed to be a blowout. It was supposed to get ugly, and yet we got a phenomenal game that nobody saw coming. You can't dictate the outcome. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Kirk Herbstreit, right? He's the most powerful voice in the game. I disagree with him on a lot of things. Last year, I called him out on the very same thing, and I said the exact same thing I'm going to say now. And it got me in trouble because it was Florida State, and people said, oh, you're jealous of Herbie. If I was in his shoes, I would want to call compelling, close games as well. I think a lot of this is his frustration with calling blowouts. Like, he gets upset because I've called blowouts because I had a lot of crappy games. They suck. You feel like you're not a part of the game. It's not exciting. When you're at a fun game, everyone loves it. Viewers love it. You get more ratings. It's good for everybody. I think that's why he's changed. I think he wants to call better games. Yeah. And so he feels like it's safer to get rid of Florida State. We don't want them with a backup because look how ugly that ACC championship game was. We don't want to see that again. He sees, the Indianas and some of these, I don't want to watch them.
He's freezing his ass off in a blowout over Tennessee. Exactly.
That's my point. You can't predict perfectly. It's sports. Mm-hmm. That's what we're supposed to do. And I think the most dangerous thing about what he's doing now, the point that he's making about, 9-3, and we think an 11-1 team is cute because they won 11 games. It's really hard. I don't care what, and especially when you're comparing Power 4 teams, because you always get the personal say, well, what about Boise or what about Army or Navy who are undefeated? We're talking about Power 4. These are the same level on the sport. Now, if you feel like you're better and the SEC is better than the Big Ten, then go ahead and separate and start your own playoff. If maybe that's best for close games and ratings, then go ahead and do it. But to diminish a team for going 11-1, I get their schedule wasn't as hard as everybody else's, but they still won every game. They didn't lose to Vanderbilt. They didn't lose to Arkansas on the road. They didn't lose, to some of these teams that were garbage that we just somehow overlook. It would destroy the regular season if we didn't care that Bama lost on the road to Oklahoma 24-3. Or if we gave them a pass, Ole Miss, if we gave them a pass for losing to Kentucky at home or South Carolina. Like, we can't start doling out passes or else the regular season becomes meaningless, which I always thought. And one thing, even with the expanded playoff, I was kind of proud because that was the one thing I was told, regular season's not going to matter anymore when we expand the playoffs. It still did if we keep it like this. But if we change that criteria, that diminishes the regular season, and it's completely different landscape if that happens.
I mean, so 2017, as Chip mentioned, Ohio State's got two way better wins than anything 11-1 Bama had. Remember, that was the year, Bama had, they had a loss that was competitive, but they didn't have the wins. Herbstreit, quote, "The losses matter. To lose the way Ohio State lost to Iowa, it sent a message that the committee couldn't forget."
Oh, you mean kind of like if you...
Oh, and by the way, speaking of lines that you will never hear on that network again, the committee really is in love with Alabama. I'm not convinced Alabama is one of the top four teams in the country. I'm not convinced Alabama would have beaten Wisconsin this past weekend. That was from Jesse Palmer. So, never to return. If the Tennessee game had gone first, we probably don't hear a lot of this stuff, right? It blew up in their face because that was the last one. And the SEC team got dump trucked worse than anybody else.
Right.
Basically. Well, SMU was actually worse, but if you don't get that weird interception call, Ohio State probably I was suggesting our group chat we start the show at halftime if it was going the way it was going, So they're going to go to 14 in what, 14 months from now?
But did you look at I think there's an easy fix if they wanted to do it after 1 year. And now, can you guys explain it? Because I hear people saying reseed. I don't think of it as reseeding after this round. I think of coming in properly. Yeah. Yes. Having the 12 teams ranked. And yes, if you win your conference, I want you in, right? That should I'm okay with the automatic qualifiers. But just because you won your conference doesn't mean you're a top 4 seed with a bye, or you have to be ranked in a certain spot. If you look at the matchups, and granted, there's going to be bigger point spreads than others, but I would have rather seen, what was it? Clemson, Notre Dame would have been a 5-12 matchup, which I think maybe Notre Dame blows them out, but maybe they don't, and the matchups would have felt a little bit more compelling. Ohio State would have played Arizona State. That could have been a smattering, just like we saw on Saturday night. But I do think we would have gotten at least a little bit of competitive balance if they had seeded it properly and just ranked them and put them in there, which I didn't think I wasn't that concerned about it. But now that I thought, now that we've seen it, I'm like, that would be a tweak we could make, which isn't major, which maybe corrects some of this problem.
And it should be made. And I think, you got to remember, they approved this format, and it takes unanimous approval to change the format. They approved this format when we had something called the Pac-12. Who would have been the Pac-12 champion this year?
Oregon.
We had something called the Big 12. Who would have been the Big 12 champion?
Texas.
Yes, one of the issues here is that we no longer have those two leagues. So you're awarding automatic buys to teams like Arizona State, who had a great season, and Boise, who had a great season. But I think this is probably the only thing valid I find from Kirk's complaint. And I think he probably thinks this because he does so much NFL now too. That you can kind of, I think, trace. It's not like ESPN gets the SEC and they do have the SEC, but I think it's also like Kirk calling the NFL focuses a little more on who has NFL talent, who doesn't, that kind of stuff. The Big 12 doesn't have NFL talent, right? I mean, they're going to have less than half the draft picks of any other league, probably. They're just not, the players in that league are not that good. So them getting a bye does feel a little bit egregious. But remember, the format was approved back when we had 5 Power 5 conferences. And actually, each Power 5 conference had legitimate big-time teams in it. Now the Big 12 doesn't have any of those.
Right.
And so I think that makes a lot of sense to change this. Maybe you go 2 automatic buys when you go to 14, which is what we'll do in 26. Will they have some sort of interim change is an interesting question to me.
I hope so.
Yeah. Now we've got a situation where we could have 2 of our 4 quarterfinals are blowouts.
Yes.
Right. And that's where the likelihood is.
We could have shocking Cinderella upsets.
Also true.
Maybe.
I do think but here's the best part about this. Okay, there's two points. One, I'd rather watch those games with packed stadiums, 100% participation, except for one quarterback who bailed, than a bowl game that half the team is opted out in front of a half-empty stadium that nobody cares about. There's nothing at stake, right? So I'd rather see more playoffs in a meaningful atmosphere than a bowl game that nobody cares about. I also think we saw so many blowouts in the 14 playoff, and people have pointed that out in the chat. I think this is going to alleviate. I think our Final Four is going to be awesome. Granted, we could still get a blowout, but you're weeding out TCU. I don't think would have made it to the playoffs or the final in a 12-team playoff. Shoot, they might have not made it in an 18 playoff. And they did beat Michigan, and that was a nice win. But I think the likelihood of us getting blowouts in the Final Four is greatly reduced because we're weeding out some of those along this process, the way a playoff should work. And most importantly, we're weeding out who we think are good. We're letting them play it on the field as much as
they're
possible.
weeding it out by playing.
Right, exactly. We're letting them play it on the field. We're
So
letting
much
them determine on the field, which is it's sometimes going to be painful, and there's some because we were wrong, about teams who we thought were best, but we did let them earn their way in, and now we're letting them settle in on the field more so than we have in years past.
Not a pushback, but at least a thought here. Even when the 2 best teams in the country play, sometimes a game will get sideways. I don't want to say
Super Bowls happened.
Clemson, Alabama, 2018, 44-16. Those were undisputed. The best teams in the country at the end of that season. It was 14-0 against 14-0 in the last game of the year, and you're like, okay, let's see Trevor and Tua, and the game was done midway through the second quarter.
The
Can I
funny
remind
thing
you
about
guys? Go ahead, Tom.
this is the funny thing about sports is that it's unpredictable. It's like we could sit here and think we know everything, but even when the two, like you said, Chip, even when the two best teams get together, one team might just beat the hell out of the other. Like you can look at a long-term sample and figure out who's going to be good. When it comes to individual games, anything can happen. That's the whole point of the damn playoff.
Which is
Like
why I
that-
don't want to orchestrate a television show.
Yeah,
and
but
it is.
that's what they want.
Yeah.
They
no,
want a TV show
no,
because
I
it
don't
makes more
wanna
money.
I don't want to orchestrate a television show. I think that's bad for the sport in like a lot of like big picture kind of ways. I think that I think that we can look at the results without focusing on the margins of victory, but instead see flaws within the way that this thing is set up. I mean, you're taking these teams that were already disadvantaged and you're sending them on the road after a 3-week layoff to go play in a hostile environment. Like all of they were already an underdog. And what was revealed in this first ever on-campus first round is like, man, and that's like a huge hill to be able to climb out of.
So, to Danny's point of like, what games is this really replacing? We get 11 playoff games now. We used to get 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, Washington, Michigan championship, cool. Like it was intriguing for about 20 minutes. Bama, Michigan was a good game, or at least it was intriguing, kind of sloppily played. Texas, Washington was an awesome game last year. So that's 3. Let's build out our 4 through 11 from last year, shall we?
Oh, God, not Missouri, Ohio State.
Iowa, Tennessee, 35-0. Okay, that was a fun one on January 1st. Wisconsin, LSU, actually, that was kind of a banger. I do remember that, 35-31. Liberty, Oregon, kind of sucked. Auburn, Maryland, total garbage. Ole Miss, Penn State was actually kind of intriguing. All right. Georgia, Florida State, not the best game.
Understatement of the year.
Gloss over that one.
Like Missouri, Ohio State, like we should show that if we're going to torture like prisoners. I mean, that was horrendous. Like nobody wanted to watch that ever again. Oregon State, Notre Dame, 40-8. That was your best ranked on ranked non-playoff game last year. 19 versus 16. Bunch of opt-outs, coaching changes and stuff. It gets ugly fast. Like I guarantee you, these games are still better than the 4 through 11 that we would have had last year around this time.
I wanted to read this because this comes from our dear friend David Hale, who did the research. He
Thank
said,
goodness for David.
He's like,
Yeah,
I was
he does
curious.
a lot of great stats.
So I looked this up. He said to qualify for the playoff, apparently, you need multiple top 25 wins, a top 30 strength of schedule, and 3 or fewer losses. With that criteria, your 12-team playoff field in 2024 would have been Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Georgia. Nobody else. You know who's not on that list? 3 of our 4 winners this weekend who nobody seems to mind were in the playoff. Texas, Penn State, and Notre Dame.
That's the thing. And that's the other thing that was bothering me was Indiana was getting singled out so much for their resume. Texas' resume wasn't great. Notre Dame's resume wasn't great. And it didn't mean that, like, and Texas fans took it like, oh, you don't think they could win? Or Notre Dame, they look at them. They clearly
just got
did
their
it.
best win.
That
was
right,
their best
exactly.
win this season.
Exactly, because they were given the opportunity to do it. And I had no problem that they were in, but it's like they're just very frustrating.
Any other? I've got a couple more things. I mean, it is festive.
I have a question for you.
This is
guys.
a big airing. This is a day to air grievances.
Oh yeah, this is a great airing of grievances. Somebody just asked me, did you like Lane Kiffin on X over the weekend?
During the day.
I loved making fun of him.
Yeah, so I was kind of torn because I don't want to tell him to stay off because it gives us so much great content. And I'd say it's similar to like Kirk Cignetti coming out and like swinging a big stick before the game. If you want to do that, you better back it up. And if you don't back it up, you better be prepared to wear it and get dunked on and murdered by Joe Klatt. Like that's a very real thing that could happen. And like, can you imagine if, and I don't think this happens, but if they lose to Duke, oh my gosh, he's going to get dragged across social media. But he kind of knows it. I guess that's why he logs off. As soon as it kind of gets bad, he's like, all right, I'm out. I mean,
has Feinbaum tweeted yet? I don't think Feinbaum tweeted since the Tennessee game started.
No, but he had a segment this Monday morning where he just continued to lay into Indiana and SMU and just conveniently no mention of the Tennessee.
He knows who's watching. Yeah. Right. That's all. He knows who his audience is.
So like I kind of do like it. I think it's good that he's out there giving his opinion. Like I love it. But if I was the fan base, like, I don't know if I would want it to be like, man. And again, then you're kind of subjecting yourself to criticism if you don't back it up or if something goes the wrong way.
And on a human level, if you realize you're caught in a toxic spiral, putting a phone down might not be the worst idea. Like, right. Instead of trying to fire back at all the haters on that one, I let everyone dunk on you and go like hug your family. It's such a little bit of grass, like not the worst thing in the world. I would like to get rid of conference championship games. Let the conference.
How do you do it?
Two things.
Stop taking the money.
Well, no, I mean, just like, so where would you work? So you would just rank top 14, top 12, and just have them in.
Mm-hmm.
And I would start it, which means we can start this whole thing a week earlier, so we don't run this deep into the season.
Ding, 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 ding.
It helps you fix your calendar stuff.
So I was the thoughts behind this were, number one, we eliminate conference championship games, which, by the way, are a very new thing, and we let conferences have their own way to decide to declare their champion. You can have co-champions, whatever you want to say. Like, each conference gets their own way to determine their conference champion for their own record books, just like it's done for more than 100 years of college football before the conference championship game era. Number two, just what Bud said. We back this thing up and we change the calendar of it because New Year's Day should be college football's day. And the fact that we're going to have New Year's Day and then 19 more days until we crown a champion means that this thing is just going to get like playoff fatigue, drowned out by the NFL playoffs. We're going to have our semifinals on a Thursday and a Friday night. Like, I think that we should have games of more significance right there around New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So back this thing up. You help fix the calendar in terms of the signing period. You help fix the calendar in terms of the portal. You could have the portal open up after New Year's Day and still maybe even be able to work with academic calendars to be able to get them enrolled in time for the new semester at a new school. So I think that that's something that could be done where also, last thought on this. Tom said when I brought up the reseeding and the re-ranking on the Instant Reaction show that he was like, yeah, but they had the seeding and the ranking with conference championship results in mind. Remember, we talked about that when we reacted to the rankings. It looks like they're trying to preserve these things. Just get that out of there. Then we get that true, all right, committee, here's your ranking. This is your seeding. Throw them in the bracket. Now let's go play it out.
All right, there's a couple things that hold us hostage on this, right? That are entirely business related.
Yeah.
The continued ties to the bowls with all the payola. Okay. And like, that's just a long-standing thing. And the conference championship games. And ESPN's need to do a weekly TV show about this, which means that the committee is somewhat, very loosely, but somewhat handcuffed to their week-to-week rankings, to where I'm always of the opinion they will do what they feel like they can feasibly get away with. But that does, sometimes you want to do stuff that you feel like you can't get away with because you've ranked certain things a certain way the entire time.
And they cornered themselves this year.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
When you say that they will do what they can get away with, do you mean like scheduling 2 bowl games on a Monday during the early morning and afternoon so all their studio personalities can go home for the holidays?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that
I don't think
just in case anybody was wondering why we're watching a game right now?
Trust me, as somebody who was that in-studio talent on the holidays, they don't care that much about making them.
Yeah, but they didn't have the games available then, Danny.
But it's about having inventory throughout the day, and they don't want to go up against their own doubleheader tonight.
Mm-hmm. Have we thought about how this year would have played out differently with the proposed 14-teamer? Like, can we model this out fast? Because it would have been Oregon and Georgia, right? Or
as your 1 and 2.
As your 1 and 2. So they get the 2 buys.
We're saying this like just true top 14. Like, we're not going to say, because don't forget out there is the demand for the 4-4-3-3-2-2-1 hike.
What?
The automatic bids for each conference.
Oh,
that is part of the packaging of the changes that could go into effect for 2026. That the SEC gets 4, and that the Big Ten gets 4, and that the ACC and the Big 12 they get. Let's see.
Okay, but
2.
like
2, 4, 4, 2, 2.
Big 12 should get 1, but
I just want to get ahead of this. Like, if the SEC and the Big Ten get 4, I don't think the automatic berths should go to the teams in those conferences with the best records. I think they should just go to the best teams.
And let
Like
them
if
figure it
you
out.
go 7-1 in the SEC, but you had like the easiest schedule in the conference that year, why the hell should you be rewarded for it?
So 14 would play 3, right?
Yes.
So that would be like what? Ole Miss has to go play at Texas?
Good game.
I think so.
If only there was
lower
a
than-
time we could watch that game.
Well, with the auto bids, so Clemson, so it'd be Clemson at Texas. So that actually wouldn't change,
Okay.
right?
Which was a good game.
I thought
It was a
so.
good game.
I mean, it wasn't horrible.
I think it was a little bit of a relativity factor there because it was like the only one where it was at least a 1-score game in the fourth quarter, even if it was for only 30 seconds.
South Carolina would have played at Penn State.
Fun.
I think so. All right,
Probably tighter.
and then so Miami would have gone and wait. No, South Carolina would not. It would actually be Ole Miss at Penn State because
Man, Lane would have been
South
so
Carolina still
bundled
gets
up.
screwed in this. Yeah.
Remember Lane at the Sun Bowl? How many layers would he have been wearing on the sideline at Penn State on Saturday? Now I wish it had happened.
Wait, I actually messed up again. Both SEC teams get screwed. It's Miami at Penn State because you got to have
That's
Clemson. So it's basically top 13 plus Clemson. So
Penn State by
14
80
there. Arizona State would go and play what? Notre Dame. Okay, so that's your 12-5, and then your 11-6 is Bama at Ohio State. These are not bad. And then your
TV
your
executive butt
your
over there.
7-10 is SMU at Tennessee. Okay, and then your
So somebody's
8-9.
going to get smoked in the second round game.
Your 8-9 is Boise, Indiana. Boise at Indiana.
Yeah. Like when Memphis and FAU play for the right to go lose to UConn.
Right. That's not bad. I actually like. I'm not
It's
pro
better.
expansion from 12 to 14, but I do think if that's the way you choose to eliminate the 4 auto buys, I don't hate that at all.
I will.
Horse is out of the barn. Just give me the best playoff we can.
All right. One last thought, and this was the
Home
worst.
field would matter a lot there too. Like several of these games would flip who's favored just based on home field.
I needed this. I needed to get deep enough into the show to weed out, anybody. But
The fringe fans.
Yeah.
should we take down the college football playoff? You think?
How do we do it?
I don't know. But this is. I think that with the power of the tailgate, we might be able to take down the college football playoff.
It's their office is in Grapevine, right? In Dallas.
Mm.
We could go straight from the show, just bring all of us, march
March.
down there to their headquarters in that room where they hang up their hats at the door.
For legal purposes, I would like to make it clear that I do not support this idea and I disagree with it and I have nothing to do with it.
Who knows? Maybe they even have committee members who let us in.
I hate that it doesn't even sound like football's being celebrated.
That's what I hate about this.
And I even saw it like in the final week leading into the selection Sunday. I'm peers, coworkers, colleagues that just coming out of the woodworks just to argue. And I'm like, I feel like you guys didn't even watch any college football. I think you're just like,
Most of them don't.
like I feel like you're just looking at stuff on a paper and just picking the argument points you want. And look, I am Mr. Decades ago, not decade, but like 15 years ago, it like clicked. I was like, oh, arguing is the point. No, college football, like it gets everybody up, it gets everybody talking. It's one of the reasons why it won the Great Sports War was that you've just got this huge amount of passion and this lack of obvious evidence to be able to give us like true answers. So like that is, I get it, part of college football, but I really, really dislike at how so much of this is not celebrating the players, the coaches, like the people that are out there preparing to go play a violent sport on Saturdays in these incredible environments. I feel like we're losing a lot, even more of the soul of the sport.
I
I agree.
I don't disagree. I think that for most fans, this is not the truth. I think that for a lot of personalities on television and media, this is the truth. Because I do think there's something to when you know how the sausage is made, it does kind of skew your view of the product. And I think a lot of people are seeing too much about how the sausage is made, and it's affecting the way that they view the sport. Because the sport really is becoming college football, and this has been my thing for years now. It's been the foundation of my not really wanting the expanded playoff. It's been the foundation of my not really enjoying conference realignment. College football has gone from being a sport to being a television show. And the more and more we get to be a television show, this is what you're going to get. Because if you ever watch television, what are the shows that get the best ratings? Assholes sitting behind a desk yelling at each other. That's what they want us all to do. It's what people want to watch. And it's what we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, I know 11 wins is cute. Let's just decide with a big debate, right? Where's Reese Davis and his judge suit? Okay, where's Lou Holtz and Mark May right now? Let's decide the college football playoff the way they did with that late night show.
As a group of guys who I think we try to protect our sport, right? We're very close. Like we want to preserve the things that make our sport special. Don't you think if they would have put in Bama and South Carolina, or Bama and Ole Miss in over SMU and Indiana, that would have done way more damage than a few blowouts, on national TV?
Would have done better ratings, Danny. That's all that really matters.
I think it would have turned a large swath of the country off. It signals what you do doesn't matter, which it would have come on the back of the same thing being signaled last year.
Yeah.
So it would have created a pretty big pattern, I think. But yeah.
And it's also interesting that if it is the college football playoff championship, but even if you want to live in like the fantasy land of a national championship, the national part of national championship means we would like to invite the whole country. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds crazy. I know that's wild, but like treasure your conference championship. That's a great competition between all of the teams in your region who they all play each other, and you get to hand that trophy out. But whew, okay, can we talk about some football on the other side? Because I got some football questions. All right, coming up on the other side, some of the things that we learned coming out of first round results and more.
Next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending. The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, as we continue our Upon Further review coming out of the first round results, we've given you our big picture, what the college football playoff should consider as it goes into its future. Now, how about some of the results on the field? And I'd like to get this kick started with a simple question. We always have the credit and the blame, the way that you assign why things happened the way they happened. Texas had one of its best rushing performances of the season against Clemson. We had identified Clemson's run defense as one of the weaknesses here. I know we always like to say little column A, little column B, but Bud, do you think that what we saw from Texas and that offense, particularly the ground game, is encouraging in a way that has you considering their chances to, not just beat Arizona State, but really contend for a national championship?
Yeah, I mean that's 2 out of their last 3 games. They've run the football extremely well.
Yeah,
maybe it makes the Georgia game the outlier. Now they will face a team like that at some point, so we'll have to see how well they run it against a really good run defense. But A&M's run defense was not horrid. At times that they had some of their safeties and stuff not tackle well, and Clemson did as well. But I think ultimately, if you're a Longhorn fan, you got to be extremely pleased. And the defense, I think, played about as well as it possibly could play, right? Given what the front's going to do, and the secondary was our concern entering the game because it just
hadn't been tested.
Yeah, right. Like that's not Texas's fault. I mean, they scheduled Michigan. Like they didn't schedule poorly in the non-conference. They just hadn't faced a decent quarterback yet. So now we'll see if like how that goes if they face one.
I've got until January 9th to do some damage control with our Texas Longhorns listeners because they've been calling me out. I have been a doubter of Texas all year long, and they've definitely pointed it out. I thought Clemson could beat them. I thought they rose to the occasion. I still don't think we've seen their A game. That's kind of what's scary. Like with Ohio State, it's like, bam, that's what makes me think they could still win it all. Texas played good. I still think they have another level, which that comes with getting tested. Like, I think that's a good thing that they played against Clemson and were able to run it the way they were and the way they, got stops when they needed them on the goal line and, down in the plus, like inside the 5. I think that was huge. I still think they can take another level though. And that to me is what I think I'd like to see if I said that's a team I'm going to pick to win the national championship. But I love what I saw out of him. Man, it'd be great to talk to him in person.
Man, I tell you what, if Texas is really starting to show that national championship look, and I'd love to elaborate it on January 9th in Fort Worth.
I was very happy with what I saw from the run game. What I was not happy with was the fact that they finished two offensive line starters.
For all the path people, I'm not going to call it some of our data and analytics people around the office.
Minji Schmooks.
Yes, right.
Would you go bet on Isaiah Hartenstein again?
Right. That's right. But the 560, that was a big conversation. And the one pushback that I always had was you have to play another game. That's you want to make sure you're healthy in those situations. And that was concerning for Texas.
Yeah, I don't think there's serious injuries. I haven't heard anything coming out that to be concerned about going long term. I also don't know. I mean, considering they played pretty damn well with their backups against Clemson, so I don't know if it's a huge problem going against Arizona State.
Well, Banks was back too, and I felt like when we were going back and watching some of the best runs, it's like, oh, there's a first-round lineman just mauling people in the open field.
But it's just the overall point is more that, you get banged up the more games you play, and Texas has been getting between the SEC championship and between their first-round playoff game. Texas is getting dinged up on the offensive line. So that's not going to have time to heal. These guys are not just going to suddenly be 100% for the next round. So even if you get past Arizona State, you're staring Oregon or Ohio State in the face, and you might be you might be sitting there at 70% on your offensive line. Not a good place to be.
Yeah, Jake Majors and Cam Williams were the ones who got a little bit banged up. Not sure of their status, but to Tom's point, not for everything that Texas needs to be to win a national championship, though that was a disappointing update to out of an otherwise great day for the Longhorns in Austin. Yes, Tom.
And just to keep driving the point home, Jeremiah Love is banged up for Notre Dame. He didn't really play much late in that game because he was dinged up in the USC game and got dinged up again against Indiana. Penn State had a few guys dinged up. Danny, like you said, talk about paths all you want. Got to stay healthy.
I've got a couple more things on my notepad. What any other standout topics or thoughts coming out of the weekend?
I mean, you guys already hit it on the post game. I mean, I was really wrong on 2 games. I thought I was pretty right on 2 games. SMU, I was concerned about getting blown out. And then what I wanted to see from Ohio State was Chip Kelly and Ryan Day letting the guys cook, letting them go and cutting it loose. And I do think that's maybe what makes them dangerous now is that they do the mental aspect of we cannot lose this game because our coach is going to, he's what it means for our program versus a completely different one. There's a Tennessee takeover. There's us against the world. Everybody thinks we suck now. And they just kind of flip that mental script. Can they keep that mojo going? And I think they will. I mean, I thought that was a huge weight off their shoulders. But what I really liked is Chip Kelly opening it up for them.
Revenge.
And are you guys, so of the teams, I think you feel best about Ohio State. I think then you'd probably go maybe with Texas. And then with Penn State or Notre Dame, who do you feel better about in those two?
Notre Dame.
Because they were the teams that both blew them. Notre Dame. See, I'm still, and I've taken some heat from Notre Dame fans for being like Riley Leonard can't throw, and he was good. I mean, he really did a good job making the decisions. And I don't know. I'm leaning towards picking them maybe against Georgia, but I still am not sold on Riley Leonard as a passer. But maybe that's all they need him to do is just make those good decisions. Don't turn it over. but I do think Georgia and Kirby are going to do their best to take away his leg.
Okay. I did not answer that within the context of like who I am predicting and what I think it means for the matchup. I was just thinking in a vacuum, do I feel like better or worse? Like how did my temperature change on each of these teams? Between Notre Dame and Penn State, I came out of that Notre Dame game like, man, that group on the defensive side of the football is tuned up right now. And you even heard from Al Golden after the game where he's like, hey, are you concerned about, Indiana's success late? And he said, no. He said, we had no reason to show any of our elaborate looks once the game was done. And that shows you the confidence the defensive coordinator has in a group that is super experienced, that is like dialed into the game plan, that he feels like he can put a lot on their plate, matchup specific, game scenario and game script specific, and they're going to be able to go handle it and execute it. And that's a dangerous thing in some of these college football playoff games where you're not asking Riley Leonard to go trade paint with another team. You can ask that offense to go and do their job, lean on somebody, and those big runs will come if you continue to mash on them.
You mentioned that defense. Speaking of injuries, if Blake Bluff's own the Great Lake Forest scout, Riley Mills, he got banged up in the Indiana game.
Yeah.
He didn't finish the game.
He was playing so well.
Yeah. And he's a very good player. So, like, if he can't go or if he's less than 100%. But I think as far as what your question was, Danny, I think I feel best about Notre Dame as a team. I feel best about Penn State this next game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes
Georgia versus Boise State.
Mm-hmm. But that's, I mean, listen, if Boise's able to control the clock and run the ball, it's not like Penn State's offense was outstanding against SMU. Let's not forget 14 of their points came on defense.
Yeah, they've both got like on the little like scribble EPA chart, like as the game goes on, like they were both living in the negative like the whole time. I mean, it's just not a great inspiring offensive performance for Penn State. That probably played a factor in my answer as well.
I do think that Notre Dame Georgia game is going to just be an absolute clinic in taking on receivers trying to block you and tackling screens.
Yes.
Because Georgia has played that extremely well this year, both times they played Texas. And I mean, Notre Dame completely punked those Indiana receivers when it came to like the short, like they were the aggressor. And I don't know what the blocking grades from PFF were for those Indiana guys, but it probably looks about like how SMU's kid trying to block Abdul Carter.
Are you guys ready for the whiplash when we go from Ohio State, Oregon to Notre Dame, Georgia? Stylistically,
it's a nice nightcap, right? Like Ohio State, Oregon is like pounding espresso martinis and ripping tequila shots, and then like that's going to be a little more just.
I like
from 49 to 45 to 13 to 10.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, it is going to be a day.
I'm going to be in the robe, a little rye, a little cigar, maybe, yeah.
Oh, I have another take for you.
Yeah.
I've already bought up my kid Klubnik for Heisman 2025.
Yeah, well, burn
Tom Fornelli's 130th best quarterback in the country.
Yeah. You should have spent that money on your kids for Christmas, Danny.
No, what you need to do is spend. Hey, all right. So this is off to the side. Though I guess I did want to hit this. Maybe we'll save a what's next as a topic that we can push a little bit. But Bud, when all these Clemson players are saying "Thank you, Clemson," orange heart orange heart emoji, is that a "Thank you, Clemson" for all your support during the year, or is that a "Thank you, Clemson, I'm out of here," or is that a "Thank you, Clemson, I am now stepping back to the negotiation table"?
I'm going to say thank you, Chip, because I'm actually filling in on the 105 today on CBS Sports Network at 2:00 with Patagna, because shout out Ivans, he's on paternity leave, and I did not see this, so I'm going to have to do some research on this fast.
TJ Moore, yeah, TJ Moore, Peter Woods, TJ Parker. So I mean, that is like stud freshman wide receiver, stud sophomore defensive lineman, stud edge rusher defensive lineman, sophomore. Like Dabo Swinney said in the post-game press conference, this will be good for us. We've got almost everybody back for 2025. And if everybody who has eligibility and was on the roster this year is back for 2025, then Clemson enters next year in a very, very interesting spot. But you got to get everybody back on that roster for 2025 and all of these. I mean, it is not on the social media alarm bells of all the USC players retweeting the transfers with smart man, but at least a lot of very important players. And again, it really might just be that thank you fans, I'm not spitting that into the universe, but if we're going to talk about what's next for Clemson, and if we're going to talk about how 2025 could be a really exciting season for the Tigers based on all the young talent that was on a roster that won the ACC and made the college football playoff and was the only road team that didn't get punked in a road environment, then got to bring all those boys back too. So
Since this is upon further review and we're talking about Clemson and hating Cade Klubnik, I want to bring up something I forgot to bring up on the show on Saturday night. I don't think it cost him the game, but I think Cade cost his team, who he played well overall, but he cost his team a chance to win the game. Remember when they got stuffed on 4th and goal?
Yes.
On the 3rd and goal play, Cade decided he wanted to come home to Austin and be a hero again.
Yeah.
And kept the ball. If he would have pitched it to Adams, who had nobody around him along the sideline, it's a touchdown. It would have made it a 1-score game. They would have been right back in it. Instead, he tried to be the hero. And I think Cade sometimes does that a little too often, especially around the goal line.
He did it in that Miami loss last year, the game that went to overtime, a little bit of YOLO hero ball. You could say that maybe that played a part in the South Carolina interception when if you had taken, again, ball was bad. I get it, but hey, that's the learning process for he's not a young quarterback anymore, but still a learning process for somebody who's building out their entire repertoire. Anything else before we get out of here?
UTSA is up 14-0.
Let's go.
So Owen McCown's balling.
You can help me because our listeners probably want to know too. What's our schedule the rest of the week?
Yeah, I can. So
Christmas, 12 hours live.
Yes.
With the Cover 3 podcast.
You want a live stream of Bud Elliott breaking down Christmas NBA? Yeah, let's do it. All right, so Tuesday the 24th, Wednesday the 25th, we will be off. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. However you decide to spend and celebrate that time, we wish you the best of it. We will be back on Thursday the 26th, not only for our Boxing Day overs in the English Premier League, but also to give you a big game breakdown of those matchups that are coming up on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Then on Friday the 27th, 11 a.m. Eastern time, that's when we will give you our locks for those quarterfinal matchups on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Then off for the weekend, back in action on the day of, on New Year's Eve day. We'll be on CBS Sports Network at noon Eastern time. Then that night, we'll do a reaction after, the New Year's Eve game is Fiesta Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Penn State, Boise State will go live, 30, 40 minutes, kind of like we did last time on the night on New Year's Eve, the night of the 31st. Then a full quarterfinals recap when things go final on January 1st. That again being 11 p.m. Eastern time. So for 11 a.m. shows that we've got coming up, just the 26th and 27th, that'll be big game breakdown and locks looking ahead to the college football playoff quarterfinals. Back on CBS Sports Network on December 31st at noon Eastern time, then late night reaction shows on the 31st and the 1st. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lean for the Idaho Bowl, Brett says in the tailgate.
Lean for the...
Guys, we just scored a bronze in the Pocket Presence All-Out Blitz in NCAA.
Boom.
Let's go, bro.
There you go.
My lean for the Idaho Potato Bowl. Hey, Liam. My lean for the Idaho Potato Bowl is Fresno State money line.
I've got under because we've got no offensive players in the game.
Liam, are you going to leave your school to take a better job?
You going to stay on your school?
Sit.
All right.
Can you do the tomahawk chop? Can you do
Heck
that?
yeah. Somebody do the chop, Florida State.
Oh, I'm not doing that, Dad. They're 2-10 this year.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, forget that.
All right.
Liam's an Oregon fan this year.
Yeah, give me one of these. Yeah, they're gonna be 16 and
Muted. He's muted. It's
he got it too.
thing.
Oh, I got the mute.
Like father, like son.
Hey.
Because I sometimes I hit the mute button a little too much,
Yeah, sometimes Daddy hits the mute button. All right. Merry Christmas, gentlemen. Much love, and to everybody in the tailgate, enjoy it. Again, we will be back on Thursday, the 26th, with a big game breakdown for the college football playoff quarterfinals. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. Follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Hiya.